Now, we're gonna be testing our Spanish to see if we're no sabo kids or if we're yo sabo.
Solo como chicken.
¿Cómo se dice password?
Contraseña.
Yo, how the fuck you know that?
'Cause I know that. Bro,
One for Yaritzo.
¿Cómo se dice lightning?
Relámpago.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about, bro. That's what I'm talking about, bro. ¿Cómo se dice left? This shit gotta be easy, bro.
Izquierda.
Yo, nah, I could have sworn I picked hard ones, bro.
Name this show using these two clues. Wind and flower.
La Rosa de Guadalupe. You should put that edit in, bro. If you said, I am bored, when you were younger,
Ponte a limpiar. ¿Cómo se dice vacuum?
aspiradora.
Yeah.
You thought I was going to say aspiradora?
Yeah.
What is the standard cure? All remedy recommended by grandmas.
Vaporú.
Yeah.
Solo como chicken.
The Oakland County child killer dumped his first victim here. The child's name was Mark Douglas Stebbins. He was 12 years old and he was from Detroit, Michigan. Mark went missing on February 15th, 1976, and his body was found 4 days later wearing the same clothes he was last seen in, lying on a pile of wood and dirt in the parking lot of a local office building. That's where we were. Mark had been strangled and abused with a foreign object. I have to be careful about how I word that on TikTok. And there were rope marks evident on both his wrists and ankles, which indicated he had been bound during his captivity. Now, interestingly enough, in the initial media reports and police reports, they stated that Mark had not been assaulted. They even said that his body was clean. And later on, we found out that there was the killer's DNA all over Mark's body. And I've actually been lying to you. The Oakland County child killer was not one person. It was a disturbed ring of pedophiles that set out to victimize children, tied into one of the largest CP rings in American history. There's too much to explain here, so if you want to hear the truth, head to my YouTube channel and watch my latest documentary where we expose these freaks for who they are.
TikToker murdered his wife and the man he thought she was cheating with. Ali Abulaban posted TikToks under the name Jinn Kid to almost 1 million followers. However, he became known for an entirely different reason in October 2021 after 2 horrific murders. Ali was from San Diego and was married to Anna, who was 28 years old. The pair had been together 7 years and they had a 5-year-old daughter. The couple had actually been having difficulties in their relationship, and it was said that Ali was physically abusive to his wife. She wanted to be free from the marriage and the pair became estranged. Now, Ali started to convince himself that his wife was being unfaithful with her male friend Rayburn Barron, aged 29. Ali had actually been living in a hotel after his wife had kicked him out of their apartment. On the 18th of October, it's believed that Ali used his 5-year-old daughter's iPad to download a listening app. He then snuck back into the property that he previously lived in with his wife and placed the iPad in there so that he could spy on her. After using the app to listen, he said that he had heard a male voice talking with his wife. He stormed back into the apartment where he shot Rayburn and struck his wife in the head. They were tragically both killed. He then called his mum to confess to the double killing and shockingly then decided to go and pick his daughter up from school, still holding the gun. He has now been convicted of the murders and will be sentenced to the killings shortly. He could get up to life in prison.
This young girl was stuck to the bottom of a hot tub and died in one of the worst ways imaginable. This was 7-year-old Virginia Baker, and she lived with her family in Virginia, and she was one of 5 children. She started learning how to swim when she was 3 years old, and by the time she was 7, she was considered a very proficient swimmer. On June 15, 2002, her mother took her and the kids to a friend's house for a little pool party. The friend's house they were going to had a very big pool and a spa that was attached to the pool. Virginia put on her bathing suit and went out with her siblings out to the swimming pool area, while her mother was inside the house, but there was other people outside as well. And when her mom went into the backyard to check up on the kids, she couldn't find Virginia in the pool or the spa. That's when her siblings ran up to their mom and said she's in the spa right now and she needs help. At the time, the water in the spa was super bubbly and it was really hard to see through the water. If you've ever been in a hot tub, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But Virginia was stuck to the bottom of the spa. Specifically, she was suctioned down by the drain of the spa. Her mom then jumps in and she's trying desperately to pull out her daughter. Her mom even said at one point, "I thought someone was trying to kill my daughter." She thought that somebody tied her down to the bottom or was weighing her down, because she honestly couldn't pull her daughter out. So 2 other men then came in and were just yanking on her. just desperately trying to pull her away from this drain. But it was not working. Later on, they would find out that the suction was roughly 700 pounds worth of suction. Eventually, after several minutes of trying to get her free, they finally managed to pull her from the drain, which caused the drain itself just to completely fracture and break. But by the time they got her out of the spa and by the time the ambulance got there, it was too late. Sadly, Virginia was dead from drowning. For 5, 6, 7 minutes, this young girl was desperately trying to get herself free, trying to survive, but she had no chance. The 700-pound suction was way too strong for her. Virginia's death was not the first. This is something that had happened just over the country many, many times. But there was nothing ever done about it. There was never proper drain covers. But it took Virginia's death for something to happen. Her parents fought like hell, and her parents got the Virginia Baker Pool and Spa Safety Act to pass, making it law to have the correct covers. Rest in peace to Virginia Baker. This is just so sad, and it should have never happened.
There's a shopkeeper. His name is, I'm probably gonna butcher it, but it's Serdar Benici. This happened in Adana, Turkey. He was closing up shop. He was putting in produce and items that he had on the sidewalk into the shop. And then on the CCTV footage pointing to the street and sidewalk, a man dressed in all black taps his shoulder. He looks back and he almost gets hit by a gate that was attached to a truck.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Also, he said after he looked,
Nobody was
there.
I don't think that's fake, bro.
And-
Because, like, the fuck would he get out of faking that?
People pointed out that the guy's face is blurred compared to the actual shopkeeper.
Yo.
And that's the whole theory that people have come up with, that maybe it was his future self.
Trying to save him?
Or saved him. He saved him. If not, that would have, like, hit his head. I don't know if it would have killed him, but it would probably have, like, injured him really, really bad.
And also, how would he fake the timing, everything?
In the video, you don't even see him interact, like, with anybody. He just, like, looks around and he's confused.
Like, who the fuck tapped me?
And I did not find a single video saying it was fake or that the guy came out saying, yo, it was a hoax or whatever. The only thing I did find was...
Rebel Wilson is making some pretty disturbing allegations against Sacha Baron Cohen. She's claiming that he asked her to stick her finger up his bum on set, and she claims that he also repeatedly asked her to strip for their movie together, even though she told him multiple times she doesn't do stuff like that. So Sacha Baron Cohen, if you don't know him, is a very famous comedic actor, beloved by many for his roles in films like The Dictator, Borat, Ali G, and he's a pretty powerful, outspoken guy in Hollywood, so these allegations are pretty shocking. These allegations come directly from Rebel Wilson's new memoir, Rebel Rising, in which she calls Sacha an asshole. The two worked together on the 2016 comedy The Brothers Grimsby. She says in the memoir that he repeatedly asked her to strip for future scenes in the film, and she repeatedly had to tell him that she doesn't do stuff like that. According to her, she laughed it off at first, but then something disturbing happened. Allegedly, Sacha told her that they were going to film an extra scene. She claims that he then pulled his pants down and said, "Now you're going to stick your finger up my bum," and she claims that she absolutely refused to do it. Afterwards, she says she felt scared and compromised, so she played along, slapped him on the bum a couple times, and then they quit doing this whole thing. I don't know, this is some pretty weird stuff. What are your guys' thoughts on these allegations?
Minutes after this photo was taken, this woman's husband did the unthinkable. Butterfly Valley in Yugla, Turkey is an incredible popular beauty spot. In June 2018, Hakan Hassal was visiting this spot with his wife, 32-year-old Semra, who are both pictured here. The pair was expecting a child soon as Semra was 7 months pregnant. The cliff is about 1,000 feet up and many tourists are drawn there by the beautiful views. But little did Semra know she had been lured there for an entirely different reason. Semra was actually afraid of heights, but Hakan convinced her that the trip to the cliff would pay off. Prior to the pair going on this trip, Hakan had actually taken out life insurance for his wife. On the day in question, he lured her to the edge of the cliff to take a selfie. The couple had been up there for about 3 hours, and Hakan had been waiting for the exact time to strike. After taking the photo and realizing nobody was watching, he cautiously shoved his pregnant wife off the edge of the cliff, causing her to plummet to her death as well as their unborn child. A witness who was driving by was flagged down by Hakan, who was described as completely calm. The man later stated that, "I was driving there and I saw someone waving at me and I stopped." Hakan then came over and said that his wife had fallen down the cliff. They then tried to get to the edge of the cliff for a better look, but Hakan did not go down there with them, and he was not acting like a man who just lost his wife from falling down a cliff. Photos of the couple were then shared on the news, and a tourist came forward to say that they had actually seen the pair too. And they noted that it was odd that the pair was scrambling down the rocky area to get to the very edge. Suspicions then were raised further when Hakan tried to claim an insurance payout after his wife's death. Hakan tried to claim insanity, but he was ordered to serve at least 30 years behind bars. But in my opinion, 30 years for killing 2 people is definitely not enough time. So, after knowing the story behind this photo, tell me how disturbing it really is now.
Imagine getting married only to be pushed off a cliff 8 days later by your new wife. Jordan Graham met Cody Johnson eerily on Halloween 2011. The pair got engaged quite quickly in December 2012. Interestingly, they hired a professional songwriter for the wedding. Hearing the lyrics back now is incredibly disturbing. Everyone wants a safe place to fall, and you're mine. You helped me climb higher for a better view, and you're my safe place to fall. The pair married in June 2013. Guests noted that Jordan did seem a little off at the wedding. She seemed to be crying a bit too much when she was walking down the aisle. Close friends also claim that she sent them text messages the day after saying that she totally had a meltdown. 7 days later, Cody disappeared. His boss reported him missing when he didn't turn up for work. Police found it quite odd that his wife hadn't reported him missing. She explained that she just didn't know where he was, and the last she knew he'd gone out with friends. On July the 10th, she received an email about Cody. The email stated, "My name is Tony. There is no bother looking for Cody anymore. He is gone. I saw your post on Twitter and I thought I'd email you. He had come with some buddies and met up with me on Sunday night in Columbia Falls. He was saying he needed to be with his buddies for a bit and take them for a joyride. 3 of the guys came back saying that they had gone for a ride in the woods somewhere, and Cody got out of the car and went for a little hike, and they are positive he fell and he's dead, Jordan. I don't know who the guys were, but they took off, so call off the missing persons report. Cody is gone for sure. Tony." During the search the next day in a national park, Jordan seemed uninterested and very disengaged. Now, strangely, she stopped at a secluded bit of road and told police she just had a bad feeling about that area. Despite how dangerous the area was, she climbed over rocks and peered over the edge of the cliff. Miraculously, she'd found a body. Tragically, this was the body of Cody. Now, police were able to track that suspicious email from Tony to a computer at Jordan's parents' house. Finally, she admitted to pushing her husband off the cliff. She eventually accepted a plea deal for second-degree murder. She was given 30 years in prison.
Nothing has quite disturbed me like the final images of 14-year-old Noah Donahue on CCTV and what happened to him after. On June 21st, 2020, security cameras in Belfast, Ireland captured the bizarre final moments of Noah Donahue. Noah was only 14 and lived with his mom, Fiona. He was an only child and was really close with his mom, and she even described him as her soulmate. That day wasn't unusual, and Noah seemed like his normal, happy self, but the circumstances that followed are strange. At around 5:45 p.m., Noah left his home on his bike to meet up with a couple of friends at a park across town known as Cave Hill. The path he took was a path that he'd taken many times before, and he was wearing his backpack that held his laptop and several books. 5 minutes later, CCTV captured Noah riding down Royal Avenue, which is a really busy street with a ton of stores. But by the time he made it to the end of this street, his backpack was gone. No one knows how he lost it, and CCTV didn't capture what exactly happened to it. At around 6 p.m., a driver reportedly saw Noah fall off his bike at an intersection, and when he got out to try and help him, Noah quickly rode off. The next time he was seen on CCTV, he was riding several miles away from where he was supposed to be meeting with his friends, and now he was completely naked. He was also missing his helmet. A witness also saw him in a heavily populated cul-de-sac, but again, CCTV didn't capture what happened to his clothing or where exactly he lost them. The last known sighting of Noah was at 6:03 p.m. CCTV showed him getting off his bike, still naked, and running down the side of a random house towards a gated park. That was the last time he was seen alive, as he completely vanished after this. Noah was supposed to call his mom at 6:30 that night, but he never did, and he was normally really punctual about this. So when Fiona couldn't get a hold of Noah and when he never came home, she reported him missing to the police service of Northern Ireland by 9:30 p.m. A massive search was launched almost immediately, and a search and rescue team found his bike in the cul-de-sac where he was last seen on CCTV. They also found his cell phone along that same path, but what's incredibly strange is that if you remember, Noah was naked that night, but to this day, his clothing has never been found. It would take 6 days for there to be any updates, but but it would only bring more questions to this already mysterious case. On June 27th, 2020, Noah's naked body was found in a storm drain half a mile from where he was seen getting off his bike. He was about half a mile deep into this drain, and despite his body having been in the drain for several days at this point, there was hardly any water damage to his body. Before the PSNI even identified Noah, they were adamant that there was no foul play, and for some reason, the medical examiner agreed. Police believe that he entered the drain on his own accord and that the drain was accidentally left unlocked by a maintenance worker. And because of this, the medical examiner stated that he died from drowning, but Noah's mom isn't so sure about that. According to her, the tide comes in twice a day in those tunnels, so at the very least, Noah would have been submerged at least twice a day for those 6 days he was missing. But he only had little water damage and only to his hands and feet. Those drains also contain sewage, and if he was really in there that entire time, you would think that his body would have some insect or rodent damage. But his body had none. The PSNI to this day state that there's no evidence to suggest foul play, and their theory is that he suffered a head injury after falling off of his bike that day and became disoriented, causing him to go into that drain. But so many things don't add up about their theory. Noah didn't know the part of town where he was seen riding his bike, let alone the area with the storm drain. And adding to the mystery is the fact that the storm drain itself is so secluded that people who lived in the area for 20 years didn't even know it existed. So how did a little boy know how to get in there? Noah was also scared of the dark, and the storm drain was pitch black. So it just doesn't make any sense that he would willingly climb in the drain by himself, let alone go as far back as where he was found. And it's also strange to me that police are saying no foul play is suspected when Noah's laptop was found with an actual criminal after he went missing. The criminal in question had previous convictions of theft and robbery, and they said that they just found Noah's backpack on Royal Avenue after his disappearance. And for some reason, authorities just took his word for it, so this person was never linked to Noah's death. There have been many theories as to what could have happened to Noah, such as him possibly being attacked on Royal Avenue that day with a heroin needle, causing that bizarre behavior. Other theories include an initiation ceremony gone wrong, a police cover-up, and even suicide. But those who knew Noah say he would never intentionally hurt himself. Because of how the PSNI completely mishandled this investigation, Fiona took it upon herself to investigate Noah's death, and she actually found that around 3 the morning Noah disappeared, at least 4 witnesses heard screaming coming from the area where he was last seen. Fiona even brought this information to the police, but they never followed up. It was also brought to light that 2 separate people saw Noah naked in the cul-de-sac that night, but for some reason it took them 30 hours to report this to police, even with knowing that there was a missing child in the area. Fiona was able to find Noah's last Google search before he left the house that night, and it was a search for Cave Hill, the park where he was supposed to be meeting his friends. So how did he end up in the complete opposite direction that night? Was he going to meet up with someone? And how exactly did he end up in that storm drain? I also want to point out a crucial piece of information. Noah reportedly snuck out of his house just 14 hours before his disappearance. He was caught on CCTV sneaking out at 3:30 a.m. in the pouring rain, wearing a t-shirt, shorts, flip-flops, and some headphones. He returned 30 minutes later, but this time without his flip-flops or headphones. To this day, no one knows where Noah was going that morning or if he was meeting up with someone, or why he came back missing his shoes and headphones. This information wouldn't come to light until 2 years after his death. But what's crazy is the fact that the PSNI knew about this secret sneak out, even when they were actively searching for Noah when he first went missing. But they didn't tell anyone about this, not even his own mom. An inquest is set to begin this September to comb through the evidence and hopefully provide more answers about this case. But it's left many wondering what truly happened to Noah that summer night.
Is the case of Stephen Kubacki. This is one of the most mysterious missing cases. So he was gonna go cross-country skiing in Lake Michigan, right, by himself, and he was known for doing shit like that on his own and stuff, so people didn't really think too much of it. They didn't really think like, oh, he might die or anything like that, or he might go missing. They were just like, alright, cool, just let us know when you're back and stuff. Then the next day he didn't come back at all. They ended up reporting him missing. The authorities started searching for him, and they see a foot trail. It shows like him walking in the snow. Out of nowhere, it just,
It's like he was carried from the spot, like someone took him, or
they don't know where the fuck he is, and he's missing for like months, bro. He went missing in February 28th of 1978. Out of nowhere, May 5th, 1979, which is 14 months later, Steven's parents get a ring at the doorbell. They open the door, it's Steven.
the fuck? Where was he these past 14 months?
He doesn't remember anything, bro. He doesn't remember where he was. He doesn't remember like what he was doing.
For the 14 months.
What he said he remembers is that he was walking, his shit started getting like hazy and blurry, and he passed out. Out of nowhere, he woke up in a random ass field, which was 700 miles away from Lake Michigan.
Whoa.
And he had different clothes on, And he had a different book bag on.
It's looking like someone fucking took him and
Like, abducted him?
yeah, because there's no way he did that and he doesn't remember that.
So apparently, like, people are saying that he could have...
This pedophile committed a crime so disturbing that a petition was created that asked the government to publicly hang him. And the petition gathered thousands of signatures. This is 33-year-old Benjamin Taylor from West Virginia. And in 2016, he would commit one of the most sickening crimes I've ever read about. Back in 2016, Benjamin was living with his girlfriend, a woman named Amanda Adkins. At the time, Amanda had recently given birth only 9 months ago to her baby daughter, Emily. Emily was a beautiful young girl. And I want to warn you all right now, the details that we're about to discuss are some of the most disturbing I've ever covered. So in October of 2016, Benjamin had only been living with his girlfriend Amanda for about a month. And on the morning of Emily's death at around 4:30 a.m., Amanda woke up and went downstairs to search for her baby. When she went downstairs, she saw Benjamin Taylor with his pants unzipped sitting in the dark. Amanda then noticed that her 9-month-old daughter's limp body was lying nearby on a pile of sheets and laundry. Amanda screamed at Benjamin and grabbed her daughter's lifeless body, but he remained silent and stared at the ground. The details of what had just happened down there are disturbing. Local authorities would call this the worst assault that they had seen in decades. You see, Benjamin and Emily were covered in the infant's blood. After the child's body was examined, the authorities were able to determine that she had been assaulted by an adult male multiple times. The infant child was also bleeding extensively and had suffered head trauma. Emily had a fractured skull and brain hemorrhaging. Authorities believe that Emily may have been shaken violently, or even thrown to the ground or slammed against a hard object. When police arrived at the scene, Benjamin Taylor was observed trying to wipe something off of his groin. That was eventually determined to be Emily's blood. He also told authorities that he remembered taking the baby to the basement, but that he blacked out after that. You see, he had been smoking and drinking the night before, and that was his excuse. Thankfully, Benjamin was convicted of all charges and sentenced to life in prison without mercy, as you can see right here. But for some people, that just wasn't enough. And like I said at the beginning of this video, a petition was created which asked the government to publicly hang Benjamin. And this petition, before it was shut down, gathered over 50,000 signatures. I mean, this truly is one of the worst things that I've ever covered here on my TikTok. And personally, I don't think that life in prison is enough for this guy. I mean, the pain that poor Emily went through before she was eventually killed is just heartbreaking on every single level. And I just hope and pray that the other prisoners that are in there with Benjamin find out, or already have found out, exactly what he did to land himself in there. If you want to hear more true crime stories, listen to the podcast Murder in America that I co-host with my wife, Courtney. It's available on all streaming platforms.
However, coined the phrase, "You can't make this stuff up," might have known the story of real-life boogeyman, Albert Fish. A slight, elderly man with grey hair, no one suspected the kindly single father of being sadistic child murderer and cannibal.
There's a killer on the loose right now in Utah, and this poor girl has yet to receive any justice. Just before 6 a.m. on Saturday, 20-year-old Lindsay Van Orman was leaving her boyfriend's house in Mill Creek, Utah. She was only a block away from her home when she accidentally struck a cat in the road, so she put her hazards on and got out to help. This was near 3051 South, 2300 East, near Maverick gas station. While she was helping this cat, police believe that a light-colored Nissan Titan going 40 miles per hour hit her. And instead of getting out to help her or calling the police for help, they just left her there, dying in the middle of the road, all alone. Lindsay was taken to the hospital where she sadly died later that night due to how severe her injuries were. The Unified Police Department has since released 3 videos of the killer's vehicle. And like I said earlier, they believe that it's a light-colored Nissan Titan with a rack on the back that now has a broken passenger front headlight. The killer was seen turning onto 2700 South, 2000 East just minutes after they hit Lindsay. This front porch video from a house down the street captures the exact moment that it happened. You can see Lindsay's car stop with the hazards on and then 3 cars pass by. First a dark-colored sedan, then a white truck, and then the Nissan Titan in question, which turns out to be the person who hit and killed Lindsay. The Unified Police Department believed that 2 other vehicles may have witnessed this happen, one of them being a black SUV that may have stopped behind Lindsay after she got out to help the cat, and they may have actually witnessed her being hit by the truck. So if this was you, or you were in the area and could have possibly seen something, please come forward and help this killer be caught. This is the footage from the Maverick gas station near where the incident happened. It's definitely way more clear and shows a good picture of the suspect's truck. Someone has to know who this car belongs to, and you need to come forward and do the right thing, because nothing is worse than not knowing who took your loved one's life away. Lindsay was only 20 years old, and she was described as always happy, always dancing, and incredibly compassionate. She did not deserve this. Her family set up a GoFundMe to help with hospital bills and other expenses, so I'll leave that here. If you have any information at all, please call 801-840-4000 and reference this case number.
This man got both of his kidneys stolen, and this story is absolutely disturbing. There was a young man who was going to college, and he went to Las Vegas with his buddies for spring break. They were all having a good time going from bar to bar and gulping down drink after drink. They stopped at one bar where a band was playing music, and pretty soon the friends were all laughing, singing, and shouting loudly. The young man had just finished another drink when a beautiful young woman came up to him and started talking to him. He was surprised and flattered at the same time. The woman seemed to be really attracted to him. So when she invited him to another party, he agreed instantly. Leaving his friends at the bar, the young man followed her to an apartment on the outskirts of the city. When they went inside, there was already a party in full swing. They continued to drink and even danced a little. Then the girl began rummaging around in her handbag and took out a small pouch. Inside there were 2 pills. She took one of the pills and popped it in her mouth. Then, with a smile, she offered the other one to him. Although the young man would never usually do drugs, he decided to try it out just this once. He thanked her, took the pill, and swallowed it. That was the last thing he remembered. The next morning, he woke up in an unfamiliar hotel room. Looking around, he realized that he was lying completely naked, submerged up to his neck in a bathtub filled with ice. Groggy and disoriented, he frantically tried to remember how he ended up there. He was confused, scared, and in a lot of pain. That's when he spotted a crumbled up note in his hand that said, "If you don't want to die, call 911. There was a cell phone sitting on a small table beside the bathtub. He picked it up and dialed the number, his fingers numb and clumsy from the ice. When the emergency service operator answered, the young man explained that he didn't know where he was or how he got there, but he was in a lot of pain. When he mentioned the bathtub filled with ice and the note, the operator seemed oddly familiar with this situation. She said, "Sir, can you do the following for me? Slowly and carefully get out of the bath and examine yourself in the mirror." The man then grabbed the towel rack and pulled himself up out of the ice. Looking over at the mirror, he saw that there were 2 9-inch slits on his lower back. When he described the injuries, the operator said, "You need to get back into the bath, sir. The paramedics are on their way. Do not move until they arrive." "What happened to me?" asked the young man nervously. "I don't want you to panic," said the operator, "but last night you were drugged. Someone removed both of your kidneys. There's a ring of organ thieves operating in the city. They harvest kidneys and sell them on the black market. They say the young man is currently in the hospital on life support machine awaiting a kidney donor to this day."
Just don't understand how someone can be killed and it's all caught on camera, yet the killer is just never found. I'm talking about the murder of Liz Barraza. She was setting up for a garage sale in the early morning hours of January 25th, 2019, when someone dressed in a disguise was caught on multiple cameras walking up to Liz and shooting her 4 times at point blank range. I truly just don't get how this case is still unsolved. So at around 6 that morning, Liz gets a coffee from a local Starbucks. She then drives back to her house in Tomball, Texas in the Princeton Place subdivision and starts setting up for a garage sale. Liz wanted to do the garage sale to earn some extra money for her and her husband Sergio's 5th wedding anniversary that would take place in a few days. To celebrate, the two were going to Universal Studios in Orlando. Just the night before, Liz put out 2 signs for the garage sale, one at the entrance of their neighborhood and one just down the road. So at 6:47 that morning, Liz and Sergio start setting up for the garage sale before Sergio leaves for work. Around this time, a dark-colored Nissan Frontier truck is seen entering the neighborhood and parking down the road. A few minutes after Sergio leaves, the truck is seen driving towards Liz's home. Whoever's driving does a 3-point turn and parks behind Liz's car, and then they get out and start walking towards her. I want to point out what this person appears to be wearing. It's definitely a disguise of some sort, but it looks like they're wearing a wig and possibly a robe with some pointed boots or heels. At this point, Liz is still setting up for the garage sale, but she sees this person walking towards her, and you can actually hear Liz say good morning, which was captured on her doorbell camera. This person then says something to her for about 6 seconds seconds before pulling out a revolver and shooting her 4 times. The first shot goes through the right side of Liz's neck. She's then shot twice in the chest, and as Liz drops to the ground, the killer stands over her and shoots her once more point blank in the face. The killer then runs back to their truck and drives off. Meanwhile, several of Liz's neighbors heard the gunshots and called the police. And while the neighbor across the street is on the phone with the operator, he sees the truck drive away. Liz's entire murder was caught on several of her neighbors' security cameras. I'm going to play part of that footage right now, so here it is. What's insane though is that just moments after the shooting, the killer then does a U-turn and drives back by Liz's house just to make sure she's dead. Police arrive just a few minutes later, but at this point, the killer is gone. Liz was then taken to the hospital where she sadly died a day later. Police initially thought that this was a robbery gone wrong, but nothing was taken from her house or from the garage sale. And what's terrifying is that the killer was caught on security footage casing Liz's house before the murder as well. As early as 2 the morning she was killed, to be exact. The Harris County Sheriff's Office now believed that Liz's murder was planned because not only was the killer in disguise, but they also used a revolver that doesn't leave behind any shell casings. Adding to the theory that this was planned was the fact that Liz didn't publicly advertise that she was hosting a garage sale. It was never posted to her social media, and only a few people knew that it was going on outside of the 2 signs that she posted just the night before. Investigators began pulling video footage from commercial businesses nearby, and the killer's truck was caught on camera several times leaving the scene, but it was eventually lost in an area with no camera coverage. This was such a brutal murder that police began questioning why someone would do something like this, especially to Liz. Authorities combed through Liz and Sergio's digital footprint, but they found no evidence or really any reason why someone would want to kill her. Liz was a member of a Star Wars charity group and was described by so many people as being unbelievably kind. She didn't have any enemies, and because of this, her family believes that this was a murder for hire plot. Sergio states that he knows that he's the prime suspect in many people's eyes, but he denies having anything to do with Liz's murder. He moved out of the home not long after and remarried about a year and a half after Liz was killed. He says he connected with his new wife over similar experiences. His new wife had reportedly just lost her sister, so they bonded over their grief. Sergio says that he and his new wife have both taken polygraph tests and have passed them. I just will never understand why someone would do this to her and how they were literally caught on camera killing her, yet they've never been found. It's now been 5 years, and whoever killed Liz is still out there.
Ever go in the woods of southeast Oklahoma? On a foggy day in 1970, a group of high school kids are cruising the back roads of southeast Oklahoma. One of the boys had to pee, so they pulled over. He got out of the truck, walked about 50 yards into the woods so that he couldn't be seen. He heard a tree snap, looked up, and he's staring in the eyes of a creature 3 foot taller than any man. It had matted hair, red eyes, and blood dripping off its chin. The boys ran as fast as they could back to the truck, yelling, "Start the truck, start the truck." But what happens next is terrifying. The boys go to the sheriff's department, and when the deputy goes out to investigate, all he sees is animal carcasses everywhere, and the legend of the Green Hill Monster was born.
This is the disturbing case of the body at the bottom of the pool. In 2011, 36-year-old Marie Joseph was enjoying a day out at a local swimming pool in Massachusetts. During the day, she actually went down a water slide and collided with a little boy. She had seemingly hit her head, and the boy decided to go and tell some lifeguards what happened. He actually told 2 separate lifeguards. The first one told him that he was on his break, and the second lifeguard just evidently did not follow this up. Marie's body lay on the bottom of the pool for 2 entire days. Marie's boyfriend reported that he felt like something was wrong when she was just not returning his calls or texts. What about the friends that Marie had been with at the pool that day? They realized she wasn't there anymore, and they just presumed that she'd left and gone home. 2 health inspectors reportedly visited the pool and found that the water was incredibly cloudy. They believe that this played a major role in why her body was undiscovered, just laying under the water for days.
Never go down Evangeline Road, Louisiana. 2015, a group of urban explorers go searching for a local legend. This creature is said to be the spawn from a satanic ritual performed by a group of outcast circus performers in the late 1900s. They were deep in the woods and night was fast approaching, so they decided to set up camp. But it's what happened when one of the explorers went to pee that sent shivers down my spine. It was way darker than normal that night. The man walked about 10 feet from the fire and behind a tree. But when he turned around to go back to camp, everyone was gone, and the woods was completely silent. He called up a friend to tell him what had happened so that if he doesn't come back, someone would know why. When the Rangers got to the campsite, the scene was horrific. Blood and body parts were everywhere. What happened to the explorers, and why didn't he tell his friend that the others were dead?
Can you tell a place has a dark history just from looking at it? I'm going to be showing you photos from inside a place with a very dark past, and we're gonna see. This is a series, so make sure you're following along and remember this room. Some of you true crimers might recognize this place already, but this is the home of JonBenet Ramsey. JonBenet was just 6 years old when her body was found in the wine cellar of this house, which was this room. If something felt off when you were looking at this photo earlier, you were onto something. We're still not entirely sure what happened the night of JonBenet's death, but many people seem to think that the parents had something to do with it. And part of the reason is this green staircase right here. This is the staircase where an incredibly bizarre ransom note was found. This note was found on Mrs. Ramsey's stationery and was 3 pages long, meaning the killer was in the house for a while before getting JonBenet. And that's normally not the case with these kinds of crimes. People have also noticed that $118,000 is a very strange amount for a ransom. The Ramsey parents were actually cleared of the crime in 2008. And this home is now owned by a couple who, to no one's surprise, has completely remodeled it. I don't personally think that I could live inside this home, but let me know in the comments if you feel like you could.
This is a bittersweet case. On February 1986, 29-year-old Detective Stephanie Lazarus broke into her ex-boyfriend's house and murdered his wife Sherry Rasmussen in a fit of rage and jealousy. Stephanie successfully got away with murder for 23 years due to connections with the Los Angeles Police Department. Despite there being evidence against her, she was barely questioned. The crime was initially deemed to be a robbery gone wrong, but Sherry's family was convinced that Stephanie was involved since she was jealous that Sherry and John were happily married. When John returned home from work that evening, Sherry was found shot multiple times in the chest. Reports show that Stephanie had threatened Sherry at her workplace, stating, "If I can't have John, then nobody else will." In the meantime, Stephanie went on to start her own private investigation firm, and the case went cold. But 23 years later, on February 2009, a cold case detective squad decided to reinvestigate the case, and that's when they discovered that DNA was obtained from a bite mark on Sherry's body. And of course, that bite mark was a perfect match to Stephanie Lazarus. On March 8, 2012, Stephanie was convicted and sentenced to 27 years to life in prison and will be eligible for parole in 2039.
Disappeared after school, returned 4 years later, but different. Who am I really? You'd never guess who I truly am. My name is Kanhaya Singh. After over 4 years, I suddenly emerged from nowhere. My father, drowning in relief, accepted me without any doubts. But my mother, she felt something wasn't right. There was this slight alteration in my behavior, an odd gleam in my eyes she didn't recognize. Even though I spoke, walked, and looked like her son, something was amiss. Whispers became louder, suspicions intensified. My father, however, refused to acknowledge this eerie feeling, choosing to believe I was truly his son. But as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, little nuances betrayed my true identity. Driven by her maternal instincts, my mother grew more adamant. When she demanded a DNA test, I staunchly declined, thickening the air with tension. The raw truth. I wasn't Kanhaya at all. I was an imposter who had taken his place, living under their roof, deceiving his kin. How would you have reacted if you were in my family's position? Let me know your thoughts in the comments on my situation.
This is why rental houses terrify me. So Paula was staying at an Airbnb outside of Detroit by herself. Her job had sent her there for training. And immediately in the house, she starts feeling like something is off. There was always weird shadows outside the windows, and she would hear footsteps on the roof really late at night. She ends up locking herself outside of the rental the next day, but it's not a huge deal because the property manager actually lives in the house next to it. So she asks him about the footsteps she hears on the roof at night, and he says that they have lots of raccoons in the area, but she kind of knows that it's not a raccoon. He lets her back into the house and tells her that her keys are on the bedside table, which that's kind of weird. How did he know that? Another thing about the property manager is he's an older gentleman, so he listens to his TV on full volume like all night, and she can hear it from her house. So the next night, it's kind of the same thing. Weird shadows outside the window, creaking on the roof, and then her neighbor's insanely loud television. And Paula decides that she's had enough, so she opens her side door to go over to her neighbor's house to tell him to knock it off. And that's when she stops in her tracks. She can see his TV through the window. And on it is Paula, standing at the door, looking out the window. And then she sees him get up out of his chair, walk over to the window, and smile at her.
This couple tortured and killed their live-in nanny over a member of Boyzone. 21-year-old Sophie Leonette was excited to be working as an au pair in London. She was hired by seemingly nice couple Sabrina and Usem. Little did she know Sabrina had a dark side. Sabrina was very much in charge of the household, and soon this idyllic job turned into a complete nightmare for Sophie. She was barely paid and they started to abuse her. She was losing a disturbing amount of weight, and neighbours said that when they saw her she seemed down and depressed. Bizarrely, Sabrina mistakenly convinced her that Sophie was actually spying on the couple for Sabrina's ex, Mark Walton. Mark was actually in the original lineup of the boy band Boyzone, and this was completely untrue. The pair didn't even know each other. Heartbreakingly, police would later find an entry in Sophie's diary titled "Why Me?" The pair would beat her and whip her regularly. When neighbours noticed a bad smell and smoke coming from the property, they alerted police. Authorities discovered a grill with chicken on in the back garden, along with a burn pit, a human nose and fingers. The couple tried to blame each other in court, but ultimately they were both sentenced to 30 years in prison.
The CEO was charged for a murder that happened 30 years ago. On September 5th, 1992, 25-year-old computer engineer Lori Houts was found strangled and dead in her car in Mountain View, California. When Lori was found, the rope was still around her neck and her footprints were found inside of her car on her windshield. Police immediately put all their attention on Lori's boyfriend's roommate, John Kevin Woodward, who was 28 years old at the time. He became a prime suspect when police found out that he was jealous that Lori was in a relationship with his roommate. In 1992, investigators were able to find John's fingerprints outside of Lori's car, but they were never able to prove that he was inside her car. He didn't have an alibi for the night of Lori's murder, and they tried to convict him twice, but they were never able to because there was insufficient evidence. However, in 2020, investigators started to re-examine Lori's case and found more evidence against John. They analyzed 80 fingerprints and used new developments in forensic science to analyze the rope used in Lori's murder. This is when the test results indicated more fingerprints matching John's, and he was linked to the rope used in Lori's murder. At this point, John lives in the Netherlands and he's now 58 years old. And he's also the CEO of a tech company called Reed Tech. This guy was living the dream. But that all came to an end on July of this year when police were waiting for him at the airport in New York, and when he landed, they arrested him. He now faces life in prison if he's convicted.
I've been ordering the same pizza every day for 10 years, until the employees uncovered this horrifying truth. Pizza! My name is John. For an entire decade, like clockwork, every evening at 7:30 p.m., I placed the exact same order from the local Pizza Hut. A medium-sized pepperoni pizza with an extra helping of cheese, occasionally adding a side of garlic bread. This ritual, for me, was comforting, predictable. Karen, an employee at the pizzeria, had also come to anticipate my daily call. She would even prep my order minutes before my call, knowing I'd be on the line soon. The aroma of my order became familiar, a reminder of a day ending. However, one fateful evening, the expected call from me never came. Silence. Not just for that day, but several days after. Concerned, Karen retried my number multiple times over the week, but was only greeted by my voicemail, which began sounding hauntingly empty to her. As days turned into weeks with no word, Karen's worry deepened. She recalled our countless short conversations, the times I mentioned it being alone, or the soft laughter we shared over minor pizza toppings changes. Unable to shake the bad feeling, she finally made the decision one evening after her shift to come check on me at my listed address. The streets were dim, with only a few lampposts illuminating her way. Upon arriving, a palpable sense of dread hung in the air. The windows of my home were dark, save for a faint flickering light, probably from a TV left on. She hesitated for a moment, took a deep breath, and knocked. No immediate answer, but from the depths of the house, she heard a muffled groan, an indication of something amiss. Do you want to uncover the mystery behind the door? Leave a comment for part 2 and don't forget to subscribe.
Lori Vallow, the Doomsday Mormon murderer, was just found guilty of killing her 2 children. And those aren't the only deaths she was involved with. So Lori had married her husband Charles in the year 2006, and together they adopted his grandnephew JJ. But over the years, Lori became obsessed with a man named Chad Daybell and his Doomsday Mormon-influenced teachings. Remember, he claimed that he lived 31 different lives on different planets and that Lori herself had lived 21 different lives. So in February of 2009, Lori informed her husband Charles, remember they were still married, that she no longer cared about their son JJ, their adopted grandnephew. She claimed that she was the reincarnated wife of Joseph Smith, the guy who created Mormonism, and she vanished for 58 days straight. Now that month, Charles filed for divorce. He said that his life was being threatened. He said that Lori had stolen his truck, $35,000 had gone missing from his bank accounts. And he even sought a protective order against his own wife, meaning that his wife Lori could not approach him in any way. But then, on July 11th, 2019, Charles was murdered by Lori's brother, Alex Cox. Apparently, Alex claimed that he had confronted Charles about abusing Lori, his sister. Charles had swung at him with a baseball bat, he had retrieved a gun, and he shot and killed Charles on the spot. Now, initially, the police did not pursue this matter any further, but in 2021, Lori was charged with conspiracy to kill Charles. Now, at first, no one really thought too much of this, but something was about to happen that would change the course of how authorities would view Charles's death. So Chad Daybell, the entire time that he had been preaching to Lori and connecting with her on this soul level, had been married as well. And a few months after Charles, Lori's husband, was shot and killed, his wife, Tammy Daybell, was also found dead. Apparently, in October of 2019, she was shot at by a masked man in her own driveway. Then, 10 days later, she was found dead in her own bed. And at first, her death was attributed to natural causes. Chad claimed that she had had a terrible cough the day before she died. But people questioned this immensely because at the time she had been training for a marathon, she was perfectly healthy. And just 2 weeks after she died, she was married to Chad at the time that she died, Chad went and married Lori Vallow. So now, in a short period of time, both of their spouses had died under extremely suspicious circumstances, and they were married. But just a few months after her death, her body was actually exhumed because people weren't accepting the story. And it was just revealed this year during Lori Vallow's trial that they discovered that she had been asphyxiated, so strangled by somebody else. But keep in mind, this entire time, Lori still had her 2 children, JJ and Tylee, to look after. So what were they doing? Well, both children had apparently disappeared off the face of the earth in September of 2019, 2 months before Chad's wife Tammy was murdered. Tylee had last been seen at Yellowstone National Park early in the month, and a few weeks later, the last video footage of JJ ever was recorded on a doorbell camera in his own neighborhood. On September 24th, Lori contacted JJ's school to let him know that she was withdrawing him. I'm going to run out of time though, so I have to do a part 3.
I had a message from this lady a couple of days ago, and I can remember seeing her in the news previously and being absolutely horrified by her story. This is Laura Galazzi, and at 25 weeks pregnant, her unborn son was decapitated during his birth. Laura went into labour in March 2014 at Ninewells Hospital in Dundee, and she was assigned a doctor that would set in motion a series of events that would lead to the death of her son. Dr. Laxman decided on a natural delivery for Laura, despite the fact that baby Stephen was breech and absolutely tiny at just 25 weeks gestation. Dr. Laxman should have sent Laura for an emergency C-section, and that's what Laura thought was going to happen, but instead she was told to push, despite not being fully dilated. Laura was crawling up the bed to get away from Dr. Laxman, and she was pulled back down and told to push. I know exactly what it's like with your first baby and your first labour. You have no idea what to expect, it's scary, and you put your full trust in your doctors. You trust that they know what they're talking about. And eventually Laura did push, while Dr. Laxman pulled with excessive force on baby Stephen. Then Laura heard a pop. She had absolutely no idea that that pop was her baby's head detaching from his body. She thought that she'd given birth to her baby, and then she was put to sleep. While she was asleep, she underwent an emergency C-section to remove Stephen's head from her womb. When Laura woke up, she was absolutely distraught after learning about her son's injuries. His head had been sewn back on and he was put on a board so she could say goodbye. She couldn't hold him and she couldn't cuddle him. If that's not all shocking enough, nobody has been held responsible for Stephen's death. Because he was 25 weeks and he didn't draw a breath at birth, he wasn't legally a person. No crime was committed by Dr. Laxman despite the fact that she caused his death, and she was cleared of serious misconduct and allowed to return to work. Laura had baby Stephen cremated and she keeps his ashes in a teddy bear so that she can hold him and cuddle him. Laura also created a petition which she'd really like you to sign. It calls for a change in Scottish law to make sure stillborn babies are given a legal identity. Currently, if a baby's born and they don't take a breath and they pass away, they are not classed as a person, they're not given an identity, and I think that's absolutely shocking. I've tagged Laura's account in the caption and also in the comments, and I would really appreciate it if you could go to her page, find the petition and sign it, because this really needs to change. You also need to go to your email and click the link in that email for your signature to count. Laura's petition is currently at 10,248 signatures, and I'm confident that with your help, we can get it past its next goal of 15,000.
You've probably seen Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell around a lot lately on social media, but this is the full story in case you really don't know what's going on. So Lori was recently sentenced to consecutive life sentences in prison for the murder of her own children, the conspiracy to murder another person, and a slew of other disturbing charges. Lori was born in 1973 in California, and she's been married a number of times. Her first marriage was in 1992 to her high school boyfriend. They divorced shortly after getting married. Then in 1995, when she was 22, she married another man, William. She had a child with him, and then they divorced afterwards. In 2001, she married Joseph Anthony Ryan Jr., and they would have a biological daughter in 2002 named Tylee, who would be one of the murder victims eventually. After their divorce in 2005, in 2007, Lori's brother claimed that Ryan had been very abusive to Lori and the kids. And then in 2018, Ryan was found dead in his apartment from an apparent heart attack. When he was found dead, Lori was his only officially listed next of kin, so she was the only one that was notified that he had died. And it took 5 weeks for his family members to figure out that he was dead. It was in 2006 when Lori married Leland Vallow, who went by the name Charles. Leland was a lifelong Catholic who converted to the Church of Latter-day Saints for Lori. Charles already had 2 children from a previous marriage, but he and Lori decided to adopt his grandnephew, J.J. Vallow, in the year 2013. And in 2014, he moved with Lori and the family to Kauai, Hawaii. So keep in mind that Charles and Lori had a perfectly happy marriage for a while. Charles had converted religions for Lori, and they had even adopted his grandnephew JJ, but there was a storm brewing. This is when Chad Daybell enters the picture. So Chad at the time was a religious author who wrote a series of books titled Standing in Holy Places. Lori became obsessed with Chad's books. She moved her family back from Kauai, Hawaii to Arizona in 2016, and in 2018, while still married to Charles, she went and met Chad at a convention. At this event, Chad told Lori that apparently they had been married in 7 different lifetimes. And afterwards the two began communicating privately. Shortly after Lori began communicating with Chad privately, her husband Charles went on a business trip, and this allowed Lori to host a private event at the couple's home. Chad Daybell was one of the attendees that Lori had invited, and he shared his bizarre religious beliefs with the group. Chad claimed that he had lived 31 different lives on different planets. He categorized people as either light or dark, claiming that they either had an affiliation with Jesus or Satan, and he even called Lori an eternal being of 21 separate lives. And this is where Lori really went off the deep end with Chad. They began talking, prophesizing about Mormon-influenced doomsday beliefs, talking about the end of the world coming, and Lori Vallow even believed in zombies, I'm not kidding. So the entire time that Lori was meeting with Chad and sharing these beliefs, Charles had no idea what his wife was getting into. And in the year 2019, on a random day, everybody's lives would be shattered. I'm running out of time, so I gotta do a part 2. Let me know if you want to hear it.
This is the story of Macy Hogan.
Breathing? No. She's not breathing at all? No. And how old is your daughter? 2. I need you to lie flat on her back on the floor. Can you do that for me now? Ow! Oh. Every time I move, it hurts. Right, but we need to help your daughter if she's not breathing. You need to lie flat on her back on the floor for me, please.
That was the 999 call of Macy's mother, Cody Ann, and footage of the police breaking into her house. Cody Ann and Paul Hogan had been together since 2010, and 3 years into their relationship, Cody Ann fell pregnant. It was a shock to everyone as the couple hadn't planned on having a baby so young, but they were overjoyed at the fact that Macy was on her way, and she was born in March 2014. The relationship continued, but Cody Ann soon became possessive and controlling, cutting Paul off from family and stopping him going out. On the rare occasion he managed to take Macy to see his mum, he'd be bombarded with phone calls and texts from Cody Ann asking him where he was, when he was coming home. Eventually he had enough and he left the family home. It broke Paul's heart to leave Macy as she was a proper daddy's girl, but he thought that they could be better parents to her apart as the relationship had broken down. Just a week after ending the relationship, Paul's world came crashing down. His daughter Macy had passed away. He was arrested along with Cody Ann, but police soon released him after realising that he wasn't in the house at the time of Macy's death. Cody Ann told police that she'd woken up to find Macy in bed next to her, between two pillows and not breathing. The cruel reality is that Cody Ann had in fact suffocated her daughter and then waited 2 hours before calling 999. When police broke into the home, they found Cody Ann upstairs performing CPR on Macy, but it was clear to paramedics that she was already gone. Cody Ann had multiple self-inflicted superficial wounds to her wrists, neck and chest, and police found a note downstairs written by Cody Ann. It said, "I sit here thinking about killing my daughter and then killing myself. I don't want to leave her behind, but I can't go on either." Cody Ann stood trial for the murder of Macy in July 2017 at Stafford Crown Court. She was still denying murder, but faced with the evidence, including a text that she'd sent to Paul with a picture of Macy and the words, "Save the last photo, possibly see you in court," she broke down in tears in front of a shocked courtroom and confessed to murdering her 2-year-old daughter. On sentencing Cody Ann, Judge Michael Chambers said, "For a mother to kill her very young child, who depends on her for protection above all others, is a wicked and appalling act. This is not a case where you suffered from mental illness. You thought about killing yourself and then decided to kill Macy as well to prevent her from having a life without a mother. This was an expression of utter self-absorption." Cody Ann was found guilty of the murder of Macy and sentenced to a minimum of 16 years.
What? Nothing there, mate. Nothing there. What? There's nothing there.
Blood-curdling facts that you wish you never knew. Best of 2020, 2021, and 2022. This video shows a man playing Dance Dance Revolution being unknowingly recorded by some people making fun of him. The man, Adam Lanza, 6 months later would shoot his mother in the head while she was asleep and drive to Sandy Hook Elementary School, where he would murder 6 adults and 20 children between the ages of 6 and 7. In the 1960s, scientists attempted to teach dolphins English. However, the experiments were cut short when one of the scientists, Margaret Lavatt, was caught having sex with a dolphin named Peter. She even claimed that Peter initiated it, and after she left, he killed himself. In the 18th century, you could actually bring your cat or dog to the London Zoo and pay your admission by feeding it to the lions. This photo shows 8-month-old Xiao Bao, who is lucky to be alive because his mother stabbed him 80 times after he bit her while she was breastfeeding him. A 46-year-old man found and attacked a 13-year-old boy because he was killing him too many times in a game of Call of Duty. There have been countless cases of people's intestines being sucked out by vacuum toilets on airplanes. So if you want to keep your rectum, be sure to stand up before you flush. A man once donated his recently deceased mother's body for scientific research. Later, he discovered the research facility sold it to the US Army for $5 grand, strapped it to a chair, and blew it up with explosives. There are some Native Americans that sided with the Confederates during the Civil War, and some of them even owned slaves. On New Year's Day, this guy was drunk driving with his friends when they ended up killing 2 people. He then posted this video destroying the memorials of the people they killed and posted it to Twitter. All because his murderer friends were thrown into jail. Yuroko Onaja was in the middle of having sex with his 6th wife when his other wives caught him and became jealous. They forced him to do it with each of them, and he stopped breathing before he could get to the 5th wife. You know that moment when you're about to fall asleep and suddenly you flinch because you feel like you're falling? This is actually known as a hypnic jerk, and it alerts your body that you're dying, or at least thinks that it's dying. This is former NBA player Mark Jackson's basketball card. In the background are the Menendez brothers. They're sitting courtside shortly after killing their parents and just before getting arrested. Right now, at this very moment, there are tiny little bugs munching on your skin. More people have tapeworms than have dogs, which I guess makes them the most popular pet. Oh yeah, and this is what they look like up close. You know how every few pistachios there's always one that tastes a little bit different? Well, it's because there's a dead navel orange worm inside of it. Every single day, someone takes the largest shit in the world and they have no idea that it was them. If you're ever eating crickets, make sure to chew them thoroughly and do not swallow them alive. They have tiny spines on their legs which can cling to your throat and choke you to death. And the most blood-curdling fact of all, this series is over. I'm just kidding, guys. I thought this would be a great chance to tell you guys that I dropped a clothing line called Look Behind You. I've been wearing the clothes all throughout the video. If you're into spooky, creepy, horror type stuff, this brand's definitely for you. Links in my bio if you want to check it out, and don't forget, look behind you.